Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webcast from the IMCA. I am Jim Flynn, your host and moderator, and we've got a great program set up for you today. Is the what, why, and how of winning the IMCA Showcase Awards. Before we get started, just a reminder that early bird registration is open for this year's conference right now. It's going to be open until April 21st. So you've got a couple of months for that yet, but it's going to be a really exciting event. If you log on to imca.net right now, you can see how the agenda is coming together and the great speaker lineup that we have. So very exciting stuff, and looking forward to seeing all of you at the upcoming awards ceremony. So as for Showcase, Showcase is also open right now, and you can enter your awards by going to imca.net.com to go ahead and do those entries. Letting you know that in March we have an exciting broadcast and webcast coming up with Carrie O'Shea, who is a fascinating speaker and podcaster, and she's going to be talking about ways to grow your brand through podcasting, and specific to the insurance industry. So pretty exciting. I would like to welcome our guests today for the panel. First off, Chris Robinson is the founding and managing director of Boost Awards in the UK, the world's first and largest awards entry consultancy. With operations around the world, Boost has helped over 300 companies ranging from small businesses to multinationals win over 1,100 awards. Welcome, Chris. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you very much.
Leslie Lash is the Director of Marketing for the American Equity Underwriters. She serves on the IMCA Board of Directors. Leslie is a strategic marketer through and through. She spent the majority of her career in specialty insurance industry. She leads a team of marketing professionals whose efforts have been recognized with numerous awards, including a multitude of IMCA Showcase Awards of Excellence, and the winner of the coveted Audience Voted to Da Award, along with the elusive IMCA Best of Show. Welcome, Leslie.
Thank you.
And Mark Hillary. Mark is a British writer, analyst, and a futurist in global technology based out of Sao Paulo, Brazil. His research and analysis has been the focus of customer service, technology, and globalization. Mark has a deep personal experience and is a respected judge in a variety of industry award competitions. He's here to share with us some insights that he's learned over the years about how mistakes that keep getting repeated by entrants continually prevent them from winning the respected award competitions that they enter. So as a reminder, this is going to be, this webinar, a recording of it will be up on the IMCA website in just a couple of days. And today, as you have questions for our panelists, please submit them in the questions box in the bottom right-hand corner, and we will get to all the questions before the end of the broadcast. We may take some of them along the way, but we'll probably hold most of those until the end. So, again, welcome to our great panelists. Thank you so much for being here today. We're excited to have you. And let's just jump right into this and start talking about, you know, why would somebody want to enter an awards competition in their industry, or a general awards competition related to marketing?
I can take that one, Jim, if you'd like. So coming from the perspective of a company, I've worked for a couple of different companies who have entered the IMCA competition. You know, there's a lot of reasons why you would want to enter. First of all, I mean, your company, you might not have exposure to what other companies are doing from a marketing standpoint, so this can help. Especially IMCA, you know, when you go to the event, you get to see on display all of the different companies that have entered, so that's always one of my favorite parts. Another reason you might want to is, and as marketers, I think we can all relate to this, so much of what marketing does is behind the scenes. And it can be a thankless job. And so when you win these awards, it really helps your team feel proud that their work is meaningful, and because so much of what we do is sometimes in a vacuum, and so that can really help. And then lastly, it can gain media attention for your company in ways that it's not used to receiving, right? So companies might win lots of different awards for what they do just in their day-to-day business, but marketing is often overlooked. And so this is a great way to get some untypical or atypical recognition.
Excellent, excellent. Chris,
Hey,
you have ideas
Tim,
that you...
we need to see the slides. Are you able to share your screen?
You are not able to see the slides. All right.
Okay, shall I take that question while you get the slides on the screen? Yeah, there's three different, when people are thinking about whether to enter awards or not, there's three primary groups of people that they're trying to impress, and this is absolutely reflecting what Leslie was saying. There's firstly, you enter awards to impress your colleagues, so it could be your team in particular, and it's sometimes with marketing awards, it's often great for hiring to be an award-winning team. It's great for retention to be part of a winning team. It's great for agency recruitment as well, to make sure that the agencies know that they've got to play on their A game to be part of your team. So it's very good for your team. It's extremely good for customers. Now, depending on which awards you go for, but there's plenty to choose from that will impress customers. We've done our research here, and it's about 79% of insurance customers say that that when they have to choose between similarly priced providers, a relevant award will actually influence their decision. And the third one is to do with investors and the investment community. It's often good to know for your employer to be able to say that you've got an award-winning marketing team or an award-winning offering or innovations, and that's very strong for that, whoever your owners are, whether it's equity or you're actually a listed company. So those are, I think, the three main people you can impress with awards, and as such, it's a very inexpensive way to impress a lot of the people.
Excellent, excellent. Mark, you have some additional insights for that?
No, I think that Chris summarized it well. But you've got that dual kind of gain. It's not only about the kind of PR and the exposure for your company and showing credibility and how you can beat the opposition, but that gives you a boost inside as well, because obviously people want to work for a winning team.
Makes absolute sense. Absolute sense. Well, there's a lot of award competitions out there. Some of them are general award competitions in the marketing communication industry. This is just a quick Google search, and it shows up all sorts of them, and some of them are huge. This Marcom Awards has like 324 categories in it, so it's certainly easy to get lost in there, and it has thousands of people entering and so forth. What's your take on what type of competitions really our listeners should consider entering into with all of these options? You want to take that, Chris? Yeah.
Yeah, in terms of the volume of awards out there, absolutely. We look after an awards database, awards-list.com, and we've got 3,500 awards in that database. And when you're trying to enter awards, the worst approach is to just fire from the hip and wait until you get an email in your in tray, or someone forwards an email to you and says, "Oh, should we enter this one?" It's well worth picking your fights. And with the beginning of 2019, come up with a plan for 2019, and make sure you consider all the awards. How many do you want to enter? How many do you want to win? Set yourself some goals. And and then you ask yourself, who are we trying to impress? The question we were all discussing a moment ago, and come up with awards that actually support that. So it should be driven by the messaging that you're obviously all marketers. What are you trying to say? Who are you trying to say it to? And you pick awards that do exactly that. Say the right thing to the right people. And the IMCA awards, absolutely, as Mark was saying, ticks 2 boxes there, and it's impressive to all the stakeholders. And so if your strategy relies on you communicating that you are a great team to your colleagues and your peers and your suppliers and your customers and stakeholders, then absolutely that's the sort of awards. But there's other awards out there. There are insurance categories of customer service awards. The insurance industry as a whole has awards to do with cover and risk and providers, and equally, if you go for the generic business awards, like in America, you've got the American Business Awards or the Stevies. They have categories specifically for insurance and financial services as well. So there's such a choice out there. But but the main message I'd like to get across is sort of take a step back and pick your fights carefully, because you could blow your entire awards budget very easily by picking a few wrong programs. But there's so much choice out there. You can definitely find the right awards for you, which say the right thing to the right people.
Absolutely. Some insight related to that, and related to the IMCA awards. It's been interesting over the several years that I've attended the awards. It seems that people that are winning awards have earned promotions within their company. And I'd also say that, as many people say, that no one leaves this industry, they just walk across the aisle. So I've seen a lot of people that have moved from one company to another, but ascending vertically in terms of job promotion. So I think that's certainly an important consideration as you look at industry awards. The IMCA awards, and what I'm putting up here on the screen is all of the different categories. There are 36 different areas in which to win. So the categories that you would expect: employee corporate communications, external corporate communications. So internal versus external. So we have members that are more internal communication related versus external communication related. Marketing communications, which is the biggest category. And then there's a miscellaneous category that has just all sorts of really interesting ones, kind of a potpourri of things, including the best idea never produced, which I think is one of my favorites, and creative development on a shoestring, which is an interesting category. So, Leslie, you've entered an awful lot of awards and won a lot over the years. How do you look at these and decide how you're going to enter categories?
Yeah, that's a good question, because it can be pretty overwhelming. I mean, when you look at a list of 36, and marketing teams work on tons of stuff throughout the year. So for the different teams that I've worked on, both at Amwins, where I was before AEU, and now at AEU, we've done it consistently the same way. We sit down, we start out, we list out all the major projects we've worked on that year. We don't really think about the categories yet, right? We're just like, what did we do this year? And then we eliminate any that don't really feel like they have a wow factor, or something that would make them stand out and from a competitive standpoint. So we might look at a project and go, okay, well, what would we really say about this? Like, we put a lot of work into it and we liked it, but what would we really say that would make a judge feel compelled to give us an award? And so if it doesn't really feel compelling, or if we can't get excited about it, we just take it out. And then, whatever remains, then we look at the categories. And sometimes we might have one that applies to multiple categories, or multiple projects that apply to a single category, and we just make a judgment call based on our budget. Typically, we're only entering the IMCA awards because it's frankly the most relevant to our industry, and we understand the competition in the companies that are entering. But that's generally the approach that we take.
Gotcha. And do you sometimes enter a campaign into multiple categories?
Yeah, a handful of times we've done that. It just kind of depends, especially like, I can't think of a good example off the top of my head, but sometimes you'll just know where the competition is going to be tougher. So like, let's say you have a campaign that was, this might not be the best example. Maybe it's like a video campaign. And so that would fit well into a multimedia category, but the campaign also fits into corporate communications for some reason, and you just sort of want to gauge, well, we could do well in both, but we know that, and this is like inside scoop a little bit, but IMCA tends to be very marketing focused. We don't have as many communications projects or members. And so I know that my odds are going to be better on the communications ones. You know what I mean? But you don't know that unless you're involved with IMCA. So everyone on this webinar should get involved. That's my plug.
Well, I could add to that you can certainly do a little bit of research. Past winners are on the IMCA website, and if you Google IMCA Showcase Awards winners, you'll find several years of information out there. So that's a good idea. So you look for categories that maybe are a little bit lighter in terms of entries.
Yeah, for sure. And then it goes with your budget. And so like, just as an example, last year we entered several, didn't win as many as we would hope. And so that fired us up. For this year, we're like, we are entering as many as possible in as many categories as possible because we really want to win. It's really important to our team, makes them feel great. And that's important to me as a manager.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. So when you look at this, so there's some happy award winners from last year. So some recognition at the event itself. Not everyone attends the event, but most of the people that are finalists and winners do. So there's a couple of different ways to win, really. The best of show, there is one in each category. So that's important so it's really best of category, but best of show. Award of Excellence, there's up to 2 that qualify for the Award of Excellence that is given. And then the SAMI Award this year is going to be decided amongst those finalists that display their work at the IMCA Showcase Awards during the entire conference, which Leslie had alluded to. It's a great opportunity to be able to see work that other people are doing. Everyone will vote at the conference. There's an opportunity to vote, and one winner will win the SAMI Award. So it's kind of a People's Choice Award, if you will. When you go to the IMCA website and you look at a few different things that our panelists felt were important, I'm going to run through those real quickly before they comment on these things. But of course, it's important to read all of the instructions that you'll find on the website, but I'm going to hit a few of the highlights. The deadlines, obviously. So the awards entries are open now and through March 30th. So that's important to know. If you're going to submit something that has been in the awards competition previously, at least 51% of it must be revised, which happens quite often in our industry. It's an international competition, but if you are entering something in a language other than English, you need to provide a translation or an adaptation that is in English for those non-English entries. Everything has to be submitted online through the portal, so no physical entries are allowed, and they must be the payment must be submitted no later than April 1st, 2019 at 5 p.m. Eastern. Important to get that. Direct URLs for the mobile thing, keep these in mind. We need to make things as easy as possible for the judges. And if there's password protection, make sure that you make that very clear in the instructions so that it's easy for the judges to get to it. And of course, the different types of file formats that are available are important. I go to what's easiest, which is generally a PDF. And then certainly no specialized programs, like Photoshop and so forth. Chris, can you give us some more insights on the things that people should look for in these entry guidelines?
Yeah, these awards it's increasingly popular for awards to have a plain text entry and supporting materials. So the time you spend on your entry based on these guidelines should be split fairly evenly between having a really good, succinct text entry for the online form, which we're going to see on the screen shortly, and making sure that your supporting material does you justice. But yeah, it's absolutely vital, and we'll talk about it a bit later, but to understand what are the parameters of the supporting material. You've got very, very clear instructions for the plain text. You know, these are the boxes to fill in, these are the words for each box, but it's understanding what's allowed with your supporting material, because this is where the judges have a bit of discretion. They don't have to wade through reams of material. You've got to make it work for them. So I'd focus on trying to understand, you know, you've got a 5 megabyte limit, which you can put a lot of content into. And Jim rightly said, PDF is the go-to format, but just make sure that you don't overload for judges, and just give them enough to support your entry, not loads of additional reading.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, it's important to follow all of these instructions. You know, likewise, there's quite a bit of criteria that you'll see on the website about the judging criteria. And I just underline that, you know, strategy, measurable results, measurable goals is really, really important. So effectiveness is critical to this. There are some award competitions that I've been involved with over the years that are really, they're dog and pony shows, they're pretty picture shows and so forth. And, you know, while it's important to present well, have an attractive entry, to have work that is attractive, it's equally, if not more important, to be effective. So anything that you can do to make things more measurable and point those out to the judges is really, really important. Mark, your time as a judge, are there other things that are kind of written between the lines here that you might want to share?
Yeah, I mean, I would reiterate what you were just saying there about the judging criteria and the entry criteria as well, because the thing is that if you ignore some of this stuff, then the entry will just be thrown out. You know, you can have a fantastic project with great results, but if your entry doesn't answer all the questions that are being asked, then either it will just score very badly, or it will just be kicked out of the judging process. So you know, it's really essential you follow the rules that are listed for the entry criteria, answer all the questions that you're asked. Don't ignore any, because sometimes there might be a difficult question. If you ignore it, then you know you can't score against that, because the judges will run through each of these criteria that they're asked to check. So something like you just mentioned around effectiveness, I mean, that's a very typical example where they tell you it was an effective project and it was a great project and we had a great success, but they just don't put the metrics or the evidence in there to back it up. So yeah, that's a really important point.
Great, thank you very much. Let's talk a little bit more about the... Yeah, please.
Yeah. Sorry, can I just pick up on Mark's point there about effectiveness, and just very quickly, but effectiveness from a marketing awards point of view falls into two camps, and you can set this for the objectives as well. Is you split the objectives into the business objectives, what did the business need from the marketing campaign, and the campaign sort of more tactical objectives. And there's a model called the Kirkpatrick model, which is used more in training, but is really applicable to marketing as well. And it goes up the levels. There's 4 levels. Level 1 is take up and reaction. Did people actually see the marketing? How did they react to it? Level 2, did they learn anything? Level 3, did they change their behavior? And level 4, what was the impact on the business and return on investment? And it's a lovely, simple model, but when you're setting your objectives, you start at level 4 and you work down. So what did the business need? What did the department need? What did the campaign need? And what take up and response did you need? And then you go in reverse order at the end with your results. So you start off with the low level, you talk about take up and reaction, and what did people learn and apply and do differently and change their behavior. And as a result, we got a return on investment or whatever societal benefits you needed or marketplace benefits. But you start and end in the big picture. So that when you're talking about results and effectiveness, it's not just enough to say, oh, we did a social media campaign and we got 2 million likes. You have to actually go to the big picture and say, well, this drove this many sales or repeat business or customer lifetime value or profit and make the judges believe as cause and effect. So just picking up on Mark's point there, effectiveness has many levels, but I would recommend that the thing that will appeal to judges like Mark is to focus on the big picture effectiveness.
I'd like to add to that as well, because those are both really good points, and something I wanted to mention is that, sometimes in marketing and communications, it's tough because when you're entering projects into these awards, some of them don't have like quote unquote results per se. Marketing ROI is much easier to determine now than it was, 10 or 20 years ago. And even I think sometimes when we're doing projects that we're very proud of, you might have internal objectives that you met. And that's all you need to accomplish, to know that you did what you needed to do with that campaign. So I just want to encourage people when they're thinking about entering into IMCA awards or other awards, it doesn't all have to be about conversions or likes or, metrics. You're going to know when it's a worthwhile entry in your gut if it's something that you're proud of.
So to your point, sometimes internal communications, as an example, are difficult to quantify.
Yeah, I have entered and won several awards based on anecdotal feedback as a result, and that's not going to work for every campaign, right? Like I agree with Chris. If it's a social media campaign, you're going to need to have some engagement metrics to back that up to show that it was successful. But if there's other types of campaigns or projects that sometimes anecdotal feedback is all you have. And that doesn't mean it wasn't successful and that you can't create a compelling argument for the success of that project.
Interesting. So let's look at this from, we talked about entering multiple categories, as I would say probably most all people that enter the awards enter multiple categories. Could you use the same entry in two different categories? And can you speak to this? And Chris, I want to kind of piggyback on something that you said earlier. So you're writing the objectives, and then you're giving your measurement, really that supports the strategy and the objectives. You could really have two different, or the same thing entered in two categories with really two different strategic objectives, could you not?
Yeah, I mean, there was an insurance company here in the UK that did exactly that. They entered HR awards, marketing awards, whole business awards, customer service awards, and the beginning and the end was always the same. In fact, they all took credit for the same business success. And judges do like to see a bit of cause and effect, but they were sensible in saying that they couldn't, it contributed to the success. So yeah, largely a lot of the front and the back of the story, when you're talking about the big picture, it's shared by lots of campaigns and departments, and you can reuse it. But equally, if you've got a category, a campaign that was on a shoestring and it was an integrated campaign, it's absolutely wise to enter it into multiple categories. But read the criteria for that category and so word check the things that are in the criteria, what the judges are looking for. And absolutely recycle your content. I think it's often, a vast majority of awards won't punish you for it. They just say make sure that it's applicable. And I think it's often a mistake to go for an awards program and not enter multiple categories with the same content. But there are a few awards which explicitly say do not do this. But I think in certainly wherever possible, it's just hedging your bets. And there's only a small entry fee, so it seems if you're going to go to the conference or go to the awards dinner, have as many chances, as many exciting moments where they're calling out the winners and the finalists as possible.
Excellent, thank you. Let's talk a little bit more about the logistics of the judging. So each year, the IMCA recruits a lot of very qualified and prestigious judges. Everything that you enter will be evaluated by 3 to 7 different judges. So historically, there's 300 to 330 or so entries that are submitted every year. So there's If every award was given, it would be an opportunity for 108 different winners. So it's interesting to look at that. Again, best of show. There are minimum criteria that have to be met. So there have been times where a category had a few entries and they were not evaluated well by the judges. And if for the best of show category, if the overall score does not hit 17, then it's not able to move forward to a winning. So there'd be no award that's actually given. And likewise for the award of excellence, which there are 2 for each category, has to have a minimum score of 15. So that's really important. The judges, are all independent, and we encourage them very much to submit, some constructive comments about the submissions. Not all judges do that or do it as thoroughly as others, but for the most part, I think people are very happy with the feedback that they get, positive and negative feedback. So that's a big opportunity to be able to get a third party to actually look at the work that you're submitting and give you some feedback. These are the 4 things that the judges have to judge each entry on. It's on a 1 to 5 basis, with 5 being the highest. So again, going back to the idea of effectiveness and measurable goals and measurable results to gauge the effectiveness, that's one category. Looking at it from an audience focus, how it really reflects on the interest and the needs of the audience, and really speaks to their language and it's clear. In copy and script or scores, how well is it written? How compelling is the language? And as a note, there is an audio. If it's only an audio category, it really has a little bit different criteria, and that's written there at the bottom. In terms of design presentation, again, is it attention-getting? Is it compelling? Does the design really enhance the messaging? And of course, overall, is it visually appealing? As a reminder, if you have any questions, please submit those at any point in time. We would be more than happy to take those questions. All right, so now looking back at all of these different categories after we've talked about the judging criteria, any other thoughts from our panelists before we move on and start looking at the actual entry application? All right, we are going to move forward. All right, so the important things here on each one of them. Let's take these from the very beginning. And Leslie, if you would, give us a little bit of insight in terms of the background that you think is important in answering the question why the entry was created.
Well, that's a loaded question because it, really depends on the project. So I don't know that I can really give a catch-all response. I can tell you that when we think about filling out this form as a whole, we go into it saying, okay, we are marketers and our job is to know our audience. And in this case, our audience is a judge who may have been working on this for an hour or 2 now and they're tired. And so I think the point, I believe Mark said this earlier, is, answer the question. So the background section is not the opportunity to start talking about strategy or what you were, answer the question. Why did you do it? Your CEO wanted to rebrand the company. You felt like you needed to reposition your messaging. Be very clear and answer the question.
Excellent insight. Mark, do you have some more thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that's just answer the question, get to the point. That's the number one rule to follow when you're actually writing the text of your entry. But I think that following up from that, being able to tell a story, being able to sort of hook the judge in and make it interesting is also important. It's very much like, like a good piece of journalism. When you start reading a news story, whether it's going to be interesting or dull. And you know, unfortunately, we all suffer, and especially if you're a judge and you've got 100 entries to go through, it's being able to jump out in the first paragraph and indicate that it's going to be interesting. That's really important. And then just accepting that more is not always better as well. I know you have a word count, you have a limit on the attachments and everything. You don't need to fill those limits. You know, if you can be succinct, if you can get to the point and say exactly why you think it's a valuable entry, then less is quite often more.
Makes good sense. You know, I keep hearing this idea of judge fatigue, and I think it's a good point. Yeah, you know, as a judge is going through these, you know, it can take an hour or more to judge an individual entry. So, you know, less is more when you're trying to, when the judge is trying to give you a good score, give him a lot of reasons why this should be judged positively. I think that's really important. Chris, can you talk a little bit about this this second category, the target and the strategy and the execution?
Yeah, this section is the chance for you to excite the judge, and there's a lot of elements in the criteria about that are covered off by this, and this is where you can demonstrate creativity and innovation. You've only got 200 words, and so although 200 words for a background section is, you got, yeah, as Mark says, you don't have to use them all up. You might actually be able to get your message across quite quickly, but it is this section where you're going to struggle to get it all in. So unless a piece of content really answers the so what test, then you got to strip it out. But your things here are you've got to show that it was well researched, show that you had some eureka idea here, and that it was, you know, targeted clearly. That's an important part of the criteria, and well aligned to your target audience, and brilliantly executed with lots of clever communications and interactions. And it's a lot to put into 200 words. So this is where you'll use your supporting material a lot. So a good response here will have some punchy headline stuff to make the judge think, wow, that was well researched, that was an ingenious strategy, that was brilliantly executed. And for the detail, see Appendix 1 for a montage of a creative, see Appendix 2 for our timeline and our plan, and see Appendix 3 for the reaction and press coverage montage, for example. So it's a very tricky section to nail, but if your campaign was truly wow, then you can get it across in 200 words, I'm sure.
Excellent, excellent. So presenting early on good evidence why this entry is a winner. The real why there is important, it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't, when you're talking about innovation and creativity, you don't have to have invented a whole new form of digital marketing or done something any particularly groundbreaking. It might be that you did something incredibly quickly. It might have been very complicated. It might have been very political, very sensitive. There needs to be some kind of superlative that you get across. And whenever we do these workshops, and you get 2 minutes to put across your story, which is about 250 words. But the most important line in those 2 minutes is what's called your statement of uniqueness. And you might spend a long time crafting this. And like Mark was saying, your opening line needs to be punchy. Well, this is vital. You will have some statement that you can make, saying this campaign was the first, or it was the most comprehensive, or the most cost-effective, or ingenious. Some superlative in the back of your mind that makes your campaign or your piece of marketing extremely impressive. And you have to spell it out and convince the judges, because if you think they're skeptical about your results, they are particularly skeptical about innovation as well. So you would ideally say, based on our desk research, or we did a thorough analysis of what our competitors have done, and we can confidently say this was the most ... And that statement is the thing that the judges will remember and will make your entry far more likely to get best in show, because it's not just about doing good marketing and selling more stuff. It's about doing it creatively and ingeniously. And that's what awards are celebrating, not just best practice, but for new best practice.
Excellent, thank you. Mark, give us your insights on the next category, the objectives. And then I have a question kind of related to that and results. But if you would, just give us some of your initial thoughts.
Well, I mean, I think that the important thing there is, as we were discussing earlier about the measurable success criteria, if you can demonstrate the outcome of the project that you're talking about, that you're entering, but then actually give some sort of measurable or tangible outcome that shows that the project was a success. We were talking earlier about sometimes you can use subjective measures as well. I think that sometimes that is okay, provided you sort of acknowledge it as well. I mean, it might be that you have, maybe you're entering a social media campaign and you don't have a lot of very good metrics, but you do have good business outcomes that came because of that project. So you can cite the fact that there were specific business outcomes, even if you don't have good metrics on the social side. So, you know, being aware of the kind of measurements that you've got is really important here.
Good points. Thank you. A question came in, kind of related to this. So I'm going to throw this out now. So the question came from somebody who has entered previously, and they said, I've received judging criteria back that questioned the measurement objectives we set. We highlighted what made it effective based on how our objectives, but the judges didn't agree with what we saw as important. So it's interesting, what I'm reading into this a little bit, but the person who sent in the question said judge is, so that must mean more than one judge called them out on the criteria that they had set up. We did include a big picture. Any suggestions how to set up entries to combat this? And I think, Mark, you kind of spoke to that, and you're setting up your objectives should lead directly into the results. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I work with a lot of companies that use content marketing on LinkedIn and other business networks, and that's one of the perennial problems I have is people in marketing talk about social campaigns in terms of likes and views and all of this. People who are involved in sales, all they care about is the end result. Does this activity, this project that I'm involved in, and this activity that I'm taking part in, does it end up in sales? You know, I don't care if only 10 people look at my content if they're the right 10 people. And so this is one of the problems about different people have got, will give different weighting to different types of measures. But I guess at the end of the day, the business outcome is the most important one for everybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Can I add that
Chris?
if you paint the picture in the beginning about the problem there and spell out, make the judge understand the need of the business, then hopefully what might be is that the judge didn't understand why they were the right metrics, and the background section is a good place for you to put that. I mean, we had a client win one of the Chartered Institute of Marketing awards, and they actually had no marketing as such within their story. It was such a small target audience that everything had to be done face to face, and they had to explain why there's no creatives in the supporting material, because it was all it was in the broadest definition of marketing. But because it was explained that this is the right sort of marketing for this very, very niche industry on this tight budget, it all made sense. But the judge will not understand your particular business, and you have to assume they don't understand your area of insurance or your challenges. So it's very hard to make the judge get why you chose those metrics and why you chose those interactions. And it's a very difficult job, as Mark will say, being a judge and reading something and it just doesn't click. But it's your job as the writer to make sure that it does click, and that's part of the art and the science of doing a good entry in so few words. But
Well, that's a really good point, and it really goes back to something that Leslie commented. As marketing professionals, they look at who their target audience is, and it's the judge in this particular case. So it's certainly not the same target audience that the campaign was created for, which is really important. And going back to the idea of everything doesn't have to be pretty, I saw I think 3 years ago at the Showcase Awards. An email campaign won Best of Show because it had ROI of like 1,223% to 1. People looked at that, and I mean, we're in a business here that sales is bottom line sales is what matters. So it was really important and recognized by the judges, which is kind of everything. Well, we hit this last category, and we've got some questions coming in here, but let's hit this last category. And if you could speak a little bit, Leslie, and about your thoughts related to the results section of this.
Yeah, sure. So I alluded to it a little bit before, but I think this dovetails nicely with our conversation just now on objective. Your results have to tie directly back to your objective. So don't say your objective is one thing and your results were something else, right? So your objective was to reach, 500% ROI, then make sure your results tie directly to that. Or if your objective was to, build brand awareness around a new product, make sure that you have results that speak directly to that. So that's really my only advice there.
Okay, good. Chris, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, sorry, I'm struggling with the mute button there. You're absolutely right. Leslie's point there is the biggest one, and I'm sure Mark, doing loads of judging, will say that the commonest mistake, and it does seem to a marketing person like it's blindingly obvious, but it is incredibly common, that the objectives and the outcomes don't mirror each other. Fortunately, you've laid it out in the application form to make it quite hard for someone not to spot that, because you put the objectives and the results next to each other. In most awards, the objectives are right at the front and the results are right at the end. But it's amazing how many people will. It's often that the objectives aren't very specific or measurable, and the results might be good, but yeah, they just don't marry up with the objectives. Also, I'd say look at balanced results. And going to your Jim, your email marketing example, it's lovely to have impact on sales, absolutely, but it's sometimes, and on Leslie's point earlier, it might not all be about sales. So it might be about employee engagement. So you might have some survey scores, anything to do with staff. It's great to look at the surveys. And you got similar metrics for staff about engagement and retention and advocacy as you've got with customers. So it could be that you've got some good customer metrics as well to show your customer satisfaction went up, or your online. It might be that your social media results is evidence of success for another more PR related campaign. Someone picking up on it and commenting on it. But try and show impact, not just purely in one dimension. It should cover off what impact has it had on staff, what impact has it had on customers, as well as the financial dimension as well, and try and show a broad range of results. And it's not just, hey, we sold more and made lots more money. Hopefully it's a little bit more balanced than that, I'd say.
Great, thank you so much. Got a couple of more questions that are coming in here. This question asks, any advice for marketing teams that support multiple brands/business units? Can an organization name be the parent, or should it be the brand represented? Is there flexibility for us to choose? I'm going to answer that the way I think it is. I think there is certainly flexibility. I imagine it would depend upon the importance of the parent brand name to the campaign. I'm going to think of an example, Berkeley as an example. Berkeley is a insurance company that has, I don't know how many different lines of business, but a bunch of different lines of business. that are really unrelated. So the individual brand would be hyper important to any entry, not necessarily the parent brand. And I think that would be the answer to that across in most cases. It's certainly for more consumer brands that might be different, but I think you'd have to call that on an individual basis. But there's certainly flexibility to the person who's submitting the entry. Do any of our panelists have additional thoughts on that?
I agree with you, Jim. Just having had worked for companies that had subsidiaries, I don't see any issue with that at all. I mean, I might have to allude to the parent company in the description. So, ABC brand, comma, a XYZ company or whatever, but I don't see any issue with that.
Yep. Okay. Good. I have another question here. What was the name of the level 4 approach to setting objectives?
It's the Kirkpatrick model. It's the Kirkpatrick model, Donald Kirkpatrick. It was developed for training, but it's applicable to marketing as well.
Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Well, before we get to the rest of the questions, just a little bit of housekeeping here. Again, don't forget to put March 20th, Wednesday, March 20th for the March webinar. It's going to be an exciting one, talking about podcasting and the effectiveness in the insurance industry. And of course, do not hesitate to put the June 23rd through the 25th on your calendar, and be sure to register to attend the IMCA annual conference and showcase gala. Going to be very, very exciting. I've got a few more questions here for our panelists. Let's see, the first one is, if I don't attend the conference, do my entries still have an opportunity to win? I can answer that for you. Yes, absolutely. Every year at the conference, there are some winners that aren't present, and we mail those awards to those winners. My marketing budget was very skinny. Do my entries have a chance? Leslie, do you want to speak to that? You mentioned a little bit about shoestring budget.
Yeah, so again, like I was mentioning before, you just have to kind of start big and narrow it down. So what are the wow projects we did this year, and then narrow it down. So if you have enough money to enter 2, let's say, or 1, just pick the one that especially going through this webinar and seeing the criteria, listening to Chris and Mark here, the things that are important from a judging perspective. What are the ones that tick all those boxes? And those are the ones that you should focus on. Another thing you need to think about is consider the amount of work that you are willing to put into an entry, and that will sort of naturally help you weed out the ones that aren't worthwhile. Again, whichever ones, you'll know in your gut the ones that you're most proud of and the ones that had the most impact, and those are the ones that you should focus on, and you can definitely win, because the judges have no idea how many you submitted. They don't know if you submitted 1 or 10.
Oh, okay. Good point. Thank you. Next question is, our work is not break loose creative. Can we still win? Chris, thoughts on that?
Well, I think, so Leslie was talking about category selection earlier, and it's not a level playing field, as in each category doesn't get the same number of entries and the same standard of entry. So I think it's a case of look at the categories, and if you see a category and a category description and you go, yep, that absolutely describes my project, then put it in. And I wouldn't go for, some categories are much more clearly catch-all categories. The ones about digital marketing or integrated campaign are going to get a lot of entries. But try and pick one that's very as niche or as specific to your campaign, and it will probably be I don't want it to. If your campaign hasn't been particularly wow, then it's going to be less likely to win in the most competitive categories, where you not only have to have results, but you also have to have some ingenuity. But yeah, I'd try and go for one of the categories that looks slightly less competitive, which sounds like a sort of bit of a tactical game plan there, but that is often the case, is that the winners in the less popular categories, the standard will generally be a bit lower. So if you haven't got a completely blinding knockout creative campaign, you're more likely to win there. I hope that doesn't sound too negative, but that's kind of how it works.
Great, thank you. Well, this isn't a question, but it came in from one of our attendees, and they said, speaking to our marketing budget is skinny, do I have a chance to win? And this particular attendee said, yeah, you definitely have a chance to win. Our marketing budget is skinny, and we've won many awards, and I know that many in this industry have skinny budgets. So a little bit of feedback from an attendee on that. Yeah, please.
Yeah, just to say that actually having a massive budget is often more disabling than having a small budget. We've entered stories for law firms who have these vast budgets and huge amounts to spend, and judges tend to be quite cynical, and they would sooner see a small firm with a tight budget be really clever with that small budget than a big firm with a huge budget just splashing it out there. And I would actually say a bigger budget is more of a disadvantage than a smaller budget.
Well, and you also have to think, like, if you're going to enter, if your team is going to enter 10 entries, they're going to have, you know, you said judge fatigue, they're going to have entry fatigue. And so they're not going to put as much effort into it. And that just, I think, to Chris's point, or Mark, I'm not sure which one, like, it just dilutes it, and their entries aren't going to be as impactful, probably.
Good feedback. Thank you. Let's see, and we're slowing down. I've got one last question, and unless anyone has anything to send in right away, and we're coming up at the top of the hour, so we're going to be finishing up. And that is, can I just attend the GALA and not the whole conference? And I know the answer to that is yes. If you look on the website, there is separate pricing for the overall attending the whole conference, attending just single days of the conference, or attending just the GALA. So that certainly is a doable thing. Thank you so much, Mark and Leslie and Chris. You guys have been super helpful to our attendees. We really appreciate your insights over the years. Wait, hold on. We got more questions coming in, so I'm not going to say goodbye just yet. What are your thoughts on entering two of your own entries in the same category? Thoughts on that, Chris?
I tread with care. I've seen it happen a lot, and often I've seen a lot of instances where a shortlist is published and the same company appears twice. It's fine if it's all internal work, but when you go to an awards dinner and you've got different teams or different clients or different suppliers who are affected by the campaigns that are up against each other, it can create real tension at an awards dinner. And you often think, oh, it'll be fine, no one will mind, we'll all support each other, but actually on the night you don't. So I'd say if you're absolutely sure that it won't cause tension, if one of you shortlisted and the other campaign walks up on stage, or the other group walks up on stage, do it. It increases your chances of winning. But I've just seen it backfire and kind of ruin an evening. That's all I'd say.
Okay. Yeah. No, that absolutely makes sense. And the person asking this question again says, would it be negative for them to be competing against each other, or could they both be winners? And I think that you covered that, Chris, real effectively. Any other thoughts on that, Leslie or Mark?
No, I completely agree.
No, I think that's fine. I think that most judges would just, you would compare them as if they're separate projects, but it's more to do with the dinner itself. It might look a bit odd.
You know, and I guess even looking at it one more from an internally logistic standpoint of the way the judging is done. If you have, 7 different people judging a particular entry, you may not even have the same judges that are looking at those. So the scores, they're not even necessarily competing against each other because you definitely wouldn't have the same 7 judges judging the same 7 different awards. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for that. Well, that takes care of our time for today. Thank you very much to all of our panelists, and thank you for being a great audience and all your great questions. And we will look forward to seeing you in March for the upcoming podcast webcast. Thank you so much, and have a great day.